Welcome everyone to the second episode of how your clients are impacted by grief. So I am here with Caroline Poole and we are talking about expat grief. But there's a lot of things that lead up to that, and we're going to get into that today. My name is Katie Ressler, transformative grief guide, licensed counselor, and the creator of the Legacy Growth Certification Program. Caroline, share with us a little about yourself. Where do you do the work you do, and what type of clients come and see you?
Okay, great. Hi, Katie. So good to see you today. And hi to everybody else too who's watching. So I'm Caroline Poole, and I call myself the Expat Coach. And what I do is I help mainly women who are living abroad and are ready to redefine their life or re-find a purpose in their life. And in moments of moving around, that can be something that's quite difficult to do, to reinvent yourself and get your life going again. So those are the people I help. It doesn't necessarily need to be women, but I do find that mainly my population of clients is still women. Yeah.
And how do you see your clients right now?
So mainly I see my clients over Zoom, as we are meeting today also, because I'm based in Munich, or in the Munich area, but not everybody is around me. And also, I guess the past few years with COVID, we've made a huge switch to seeing clients online, and actually it works very well. It's a great way to see clients, and you get the same dynamic. And then also the great thing is that it doesn't matter where I am or where they are, and we could still meet. So mainly online. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's the beautiful thing of the online world now, is that we're realizing we can do the great services anywhere we are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what are some of the key issues you're finding that clients come to you and want to work with you about?
Yeah, so actually I find there's a whole scala of things. Sometimes people will have just moved abroad and feel they're grappling to find their place in this new country or in their new town, and they need some support in finding their footing. And other times it's people who have been living abroad for a long time already, but something else in life has changed, which has maybe thrown them off course a bit, or which is, where they're in a situation where they just don't know exactly how to move from there. So it's pretty broad base, and it can be, but it mainly comes down to everybody who wants to step into their strength again. You know, it's people who are women who are not quite, they feel something is off, but they just don't know where to start or how to put the finger on what that specific thing is that is off. And to start, they realize they want to change something to get into their strength and their stride again.
Well, and Caroline and I are both expats, and I think we both can say when you move to a new country, your foundation is kind of rocked, and you're creating a new identity in a new place. And if you have a family in tow, then you're navigating being a parent or partner in that new country too. It brings up a lot of things.
It brings up a lot of things. And as you touch upon, it's the whole identity which is changing. So many of the women I work with will have had great careers and jobs back at home. And they probably very consciously stepped into this expat experience. But once you're there and you've settled your family and you realize that maybe you can't pick up your career or your job as it was at home, it rocks your world, and you have to find your way around that and deal for yourself and also for your family to get that going again. And that can be challenging sometimes, depending on country, circumstances, etc.
Right. Yeah. And there's always the interesting dynamic if you're the expat or if you are the repat. Are you returning to your home country and navigating that transition? And like you said, as the partner has to kind of help them through the process, but also help themselves. And so it has a lot of layers. Yeah.
And as you say, Katie, also being the repat, so going back home is also people think often, oh, I'm going home, everything's going to be fine now, we're going to step right up back into our old lives.
Yeah.
But if you've been away for some time, things have changed, even at home. People have changed, and you have changed significantly because of the experience. So it's not, it's something that not many people are aware of, but you are coming back as a different person, and it's going to be a different experience even at home. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And when you return home, there is, and we'll get into grief in a moment, there's a grief of I'm not the same, and I don't know if I fit in anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that I am a triangle sort of movement. Like,
Yes.
I no longer am the circle. I'm no longer, I can't be a square, but I'm now a different shape. I'm a triangle, and I don't fit in either country, but yet I still fit in some ways. And so
Yes.
it's a fascinating dynamic. And I love that you work specifically with expats, because there's such a need for support.
Yes.
And knowing that they're not alone, and validating and normalizing the whole process.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I found, that often when you're talking about expat coaching, many people think, oh, you'll help me settle in, or you'll give me a culture training, or I can find a good language course through you, which is also very important steps in the whole expat process. But I focus more on a part, I'd say, which comes after that initial, the initial changes and obvious things that you're aware of that will be different, of really finding your own strength again in that new place. How do you do that? And how do you come to terms with really living in a different country and actually embracing it, because you are confident and happy and, in your strength.
Right. Feeling like yourself again, in a way.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Well, this is a great transition for us to talk a bit about grief and how you're seeing grief in your clients' lives. So as we talk about grief, we're specifically talking about hidden grief. And this is the grief not related to death, but the grief that's when we need to let go of the way we thought life would or should go. And as expats, that's a big part of the journey. Is I thought I would be this in my career, or like this as a parent. And when you move, all of that transitions, and you have to kind of sometimes start fresh or regroup.
Yeah.
That can create a lot of grief in our lives, of letting go of that old skin, that old way of being. And grief is actually a very natural and normal part of our lives. And so I'd love to hear, Caroline, what are some ways that you're seeing hidden grief kind of creep up or show themselves fully in your clients' lives as they work with you?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, it's almost difficult to start naming a few things, because I think it pops up in many, many different forms for my clients. I'd say the main one that I see is just grieving, let's say, the person you were, and stepping into the person you're becoming or creating for yourself in this new place. And I think there's a lot of grief around that, and getting to terms with, okay, I'm not, we all have an image of ourselves. You see yourself as the career woman who's also managing the home and managing kids and being a dedicated mom or wife or partner. And then in this new place, maybe part of that is not possible in the same way. So just really accepting that, I think, is a very important thing, but it's easier said than done. And I think that, but I'm not the expert on grief, I think that has a lot to do with grieving, giving it time to accept that, and really from there be able to step into that new role again, and the new image you have of yourself. Yeah.
How do you find, especially those that are coming over with children, that they're experiencing grief, especially with the kids and them adjusting to a new culture, especially if they're older? That can be a big transition.
Yeah. Oh, I see that a lot, especially with children, and especially as a mom or a parent, it can be heartbreaking when you see your children struggling in this new place, and in their own way missing, their school, their friends, grandparents, aunts, uncles, family. And it can be difficult, to see that for your kids, knowing that as a family you chose to move abroad. So that's a part of acceptance that needs to happen. And then just also, how do you deal with that? What can you do to help your children in that situation? That can be quite challenging. And that happens in every age. I'd say with younger kids, sometimes it's a little bit easier because of course they need lots of attention from mom and dad or moms or dads, and those people usually are there. But still, if they're coming from a good support network, then it's difficult to leave that and to a place where you don't have that close by. So,
And I can imagine as that parent, if you're dealing with your own grief process and you're working with you and you're still figuring it all out, and then you've got your kids bringing their grief
yes,
and their transition and adjustment issues, and then your partners, like it can get very overwhelming. It makes sense to then need to feel empowered again.
yes,
And you feel like you can take a stand, because I think we all go into survival mode in the beginning, right? We're like, we got this, we can do it, we can do anything. And it's about 6 to 9 months later, even a year mark, where it's like, okay, everyone's transitioned except for me because I was taking care of everyone else.
exactly. Yeah. And that is the moment where many of my clients feel they don't have the energy anymore for it. They've been putting on this armor, I'd say, of, okay, we're going to do this. This is good for us as a family. We're going to look at this from a positive angle, and it's wonderful. They go for it. But there comes a time when they're like, whew, this is hard work, and I've got part of it done, but now I notice there's another part, and I don't know if I have the energy to keep going with that. So
Right.
that's also one of the things I've noticed. People appreciate the space that they find in coaching to figure it out, the time to figure it out, the time to take that breather and actually say, yes, this is actually quite hard, and I'm not quite sure what my next step is. Just to be able to recognize that and take it from there can be so helpful. Yeah,
Well, in that safe space and the listening ear to say whatever you need to say
exactly.
and not be judged. I think that's huge.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Often it's the first thing they need to be able to continue again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like unload it all and then go, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. And also, especially because you notice that partners are often very supportive of one another. But at one point in time, there's a moment where, yeah, each needs to work on their own balance, right? And at one
Yeah.
point, especially if I don't like the term that much, but if you're the trailing spouse, so the one who's coming along with the other who took the whole family abroad, you can feel like you're nagging, or that you're the one who can't. You're getting everything together, but you feel like you're there complaining again and not. And it can be helpful to find somebody outside of your family unit to share with.
Yeah. I know on my personal expat journey, I felt, in the States, I would say super confident. I'm not going to like, hey, toot my own horn. Like, understood the health system, understood the education system, licensed counselor. I knew what to expect for my children when they go to school. And I moved here and I was asking my husband questions like, where do we buy, a Christmas tree?
Yeah.
I didn't know. And you feel like you're and if you don't understand the language or reading it and reading some of these documents, even when you're German, it's very difficult. So it can become this feeling of like incompetent, which
Yes.
makes you feel like you're failing, which makes you feel like, oh my gosh, who am I?
Yeah.
And so all of that grief, because it reminds you of times in your life where you felt that way.
Yeah.
Even if it was childhood or teen years, where it makes sense to not be fully competent in something. And you have to work through that. So I think it's good that you just like sit with people through that and go like, okay, lay it all out. And then where do we go from here? And that's the beauty of coaching.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. People need to find that calmness first to then move forward again.
Right.
Yeah. And another way I think it's hidden grief also is, especially if people have been moving around for some time and been in different countries, different places, each and every time you set up a whole new social structure for your family unit.
Yeah.
And then there's a time of goodbye again. And the moment you're saying goodbye that, it's a goodbye. But once you're in a new place, you find yourself, you're you're missing things, you're missing people from the old former country, and that also takes time to move through. And
Yeah.
it can get to a squeeze when you feel you're still letting go of the old, and you feel the pressure to step into full energy in this new place to make new friends and get things going again. So it
Oh,
can be quite,
completely.
yeah, it's a lot.
Completely. I've seen with some expats here in the city that we're in, there's also the struggle of my children won't have the childhood I had, even though they're going to have a wonderful childhood of like living abroad and learning a new language. They won't get to do that summer thing I did, or go to, this won't be their normal. And that is grief work too. Again, letting go of the way we thought it would or should go.
Yes.
You can honor both sides. You can go, okay, they're going to have this amazing life, but man, I really wish they could still do these things I grew up doing because I love those memories.
Yeah.
And that piece can be, it's almost juggling grief with gratitude.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they can both exist when it comes to the expat life.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like what you're speaking to there, Katie, because I see that also for myself, even the educational system I went through coming from the Netherlands is so different to what my kids are going through. And on the one hand, I'm very grateful for the schools they're at, which are wonderful schools, and I see a lot of beauty in it, and lots of different things which I really like compared to maybe what I went through growing up. And at the same time, it's so different for me that there are also moments where I feel like, oh God, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I don't know if I'm screwing up, their education. I don't know if we'll get them to the level they want to be at, if they have the possibilities they want for themselves at one point. And it's that juggle of, yes, I'm grateful for things I see, and yet it's also difficult because I have no idea. I don't have anything to reflect upon that will give me the security that they are going to be okay.
Right. You don't have the blueprint,
No,
like
exactly. Give me a blueprint, please.
I find myself talking to women who have older children going like, okay, how did your kids do this? How did they manage to, just because I'm like, give me a blueprint, give me like an idea of where this goes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you find your fellow coaches who are working in the world of adjustment, what are they lacking when it comes to education around hidden grief and how their clients are impacted by it? Or are they lacking? Maybe it is something that's taught.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's a lot of education around grieving, and besides, the standard, everybody, for myself also, when you think of grief, you're thinking, oh, somebody's passed away or a pet has passed away, and how do we deal with that? But the idea of hidden grief being also just the grieving period of a transition, I think there's less attention for that. And yes, there's a lot of, for coaches, it's a lot about, okay, change and how to get through change and how to make a change come about. But it's all, I'd say, very forward focused, to kind of like, okay, let's set your goals and go for it and change and take your steps. There's maybe a little bit of attention, like, okay, sometimes we need some space just to sit with something for a moment. But I would say there's a lot specifically around grief, and actually, especially hearing from you the last few years, what grief can be, the whole scala of what it is, I would say.
Well, and thank you for that. Part of the mission I have is to get it out there more so that people who are already working with clients can go like, oh, now I know what this is. Hey, we don't need to rush, like, let's sit with and grieve this, understand it, identify it, say it all out. And then let's move forward. Because I think you're right. Often in the coaching and counseling world, we're taught, it's action oriented because we're in an instant gratification world. We want, what's that next step? What's that thing that's going to improve? And so I don't feel this way. But if you don't feel it and you don't understand it, it's going to come back.
Oh, yes, it will come back to bite you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially if you have kids, it's going to come back. So, Caroline, how can people find you if they want to work with you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm CP_expat_coach. They can follow me there, or they can navigate to my website, which is carolinepoolcoaching.com.
Excellent. So my last question for you, what is the funniest moment you've experienced being an expat coach?
The funniest moment. I think it's one moment I was sitting with a client who was navigating going back home to Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
And she just at one point cracked up when I said, you know what? You've been great at expat life. You've always embraced every single transition. You've loved it. And now you're sitting here and you have major issues going back to Sweden. Why don't you see this as just a new country and a new step? And she just burst out laughing. She's like, I can't believe I never saw it that way. And that's the beauty of it. Sometimes it's all about what is your perception around something and how are you viewing it? And it was just hilarious to see that just that one thing snapped for her. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And that was
like total clarity, muscle tension release.
Yes.
It's just another country. Yeah.
Just another country. It's a new country.
Well, thank you, Caroline. Well, if you're watching this or listening to it and you go, you know what, I'd like to have more tools in working with my clients on hidden grief, please check out my website at katierussler.com and click on the word certification. You'll find out about the Legacy Growth Certification Program and when we'll be running it next. Caroline, again, thank you so much for this. And I hope more people will follow you and work with you because I think the work that you're doing is greatly needed in our community.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much for today. And I'm wishing you all the best too.
Thank you.